Okay, welcome back, everyone. I wanted to record like a preamble to this video. I recorded the main part of it last night for the full moon in Capricorn, and I didn't really like what the beginning looked like. I liked the middle and the end, but I didn't like the beginning. And I also decided that I wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing. My wife and I, we are in Peru. We're just outside of Cusco, which is in the Andean mountains, the Andes. It's quite high in elevation. We are here for kind of a little personal spiritual retreat. She is going to do some ceremonies, and I am going to do some work with a healer. And we've both been preparing for this for quite a while. We've changed our diet. We're eating vegan, and we've quit everything that is addictive, like sugar and coffee, and, to really kind of clean our systems out. And I thought it was quite interesting. One of the things that I'm noticing is a different relationship with my body. Um, as I continue to do and eat this way, it's I'm really in tune with what my body needs. If I need more protein, I can feel that. If I get enough protein, then I feel my body feels happy and satiated, and I don't think about any food at all. I can go hours and hours without worrying about it. And so when we first started, it was hard, but I am really feeling the benefits of this. I feel more connected to myself. I feel uh, more alive, although that wasn't the case in the beginning. I feel like I've shed some toxins out of my body, and that has been something that is welcomed for me. When I quit drinking coffee, I didn't realize how addictive caffeine is, but it took me about 3 to 4 days. I felt like I was swimming in water. I was so slow, and my body was just had no energy, and I literally, my senses were off. And so that's all stopped, and it's been a long time now, actually, probably three and a half weeks now. And so I'm really starting to feel better. I've tightened a belt notch on my belt. My pants were falling down the way they were, and so that's pretty exciting too. I could use to lose a few pounds. But one of the things I've noticed is here in Peru, where we're staying on this place. It's called the Horse Heart, the Horse Heart Farmhouse. And she put this together. It's kind of in a less populated area of Peru, and you're away from the tourist areas. And there's a horse and a couple of cats and a dog, and they're just here with you, and it's been amazing. Whiskey, the horse, is pretty fun. When we walk to the store is about a 15-minute walk on down a dirt road, and then you get to the main road, and then there's a couple of restaurants and a couple of grocery stores and things like that. But the toll is a carrot for the horse to come back. And so it's kind of fun. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the symbolism that the Incas had, which I find fascinating. It is the serpent, the puma, and the condor. It's stacked up. The serpent is below the earth and comes up above, and so he goes above, below and above, sheds his skin. the serpent represents transformation and death and renewal. And then the puma represents embodying this life and occupying ourselves during this incarnation. And it's quite a fascinating symbol because the puma doesn't waste energy. The puma is very selective in what he hunts and how they protect their young, and they will wait and watch as things go by, and they're very selective about how they use their energy. And I think that that is symbolic of the way that we've been talking about Aries and Mars lately. And I think, to be here and to feel that urgency and to have that presence and state of mind and choose and consciously choose with presence how we act in this world, uh, and letting some things go that are not for us and acting where it actually matters. And I think that keeping the relationship between all three of these is super important. And then you have the condor. The condor can fly above. It's got like a 10-foot wingspan, and they can fly higher than just about any bird. I'm not sure if it's the bird that flies the highest, but here in the Andes, I think we're about 10,000 feet here in the valley, and the peaks of these mountains are at like 20,000 feet. We went to Machu Picchu 2 days ago, and there I think you're at 16 or 17,000 feet or something like that, and it's just amazing to me what these guys were able to do with no tools, and some of the things they did. But the symbolism is where my mind always goes, and so the condor can fly, and it rides these thermal currents. If you've ever watched one of these bigger birds, where I live in Utah, there are osprey and hawks and eagles, and they will ride these thermal currents. And we've sat there on the beach and watched them so far up that they just disappear. And that's part of the reason that they used this bird, the condor, as the symbolism, because it could access the spiritual realm, and it would get so high it would disappear. But they also respected the fact that it returned. And the other thing that is significant about the symbolism is they eat dead carcasses. And so that might sound gruesome at first, but the symbolism is actually pretty cool when you think about it. They're eating what is dead, metabolizing it, and making life out of what was no longer there. And so it's this ability, like the serpent, we don't forget what happened in the past. It's there for us to remember and to understand and to feel and relate to. And when all three of these are in relationship, it's something that they strived for, and something that I have been feeling as I walk through Machu Picchu and all this other stuff. Machu Picchu was a pretty touristy attraction. We're not here for that, but we couldn't avoid going to see it while we were here. Um, we're going to spend some time just experiencing the local life here, and eating with the people that live here, and trying to understand what their life is about, and try to uh, get with some of the healers and things like that. And so that's what I'm planning on doing. And I really think that Chiron in Taurus really represents the way that I'm feeling this, this relationship with my body, and listening, the Taurus inner voice, listening to my body. And the Taurus is about survival. And it's been amazing to me to to change the way I eat and understand how it's changed my relationship with my body. So I wanted to share that, and then I'll leave it at this. This is kind of my intro to the full moon in Scorpio video. So here we go. Here's what's next. And thank you for being here. And I appreciate all of you guys. Thanks. So let's go ahead and put this chart up and take a look at it. Um, just to talk about this, I'm actually doing this from Peru. My wife and I are doing a little retreat here in Peru for a few weeks to do some healing and see some sights. And this is an Airbnb. We're staying in the Sacred Valley, which is just by Cusco. And it's where a lot of people stay to go see Machu Picchu, which we did yesterday. And we actually learned a little bit about the Inca traditions. They have some symbolism that I find fascinating. I think it's interesting that a lot of the indigenous cultures so many years ago really understood how the psyche worked. They talked about the triplicity symbolism of the serpent, the puma, and the condor. And the condor represents the spirituality and our connection to the beyond, and the puma represents that physicality and that presence of our lives here on earth, and the serpent underground represents that underworld or our inner side of ourselves that represents transformation. And basically, from our astrological perspective, they're talking about Pluto. And I thought it was fascinating. I really liked the symbolism, and I think that it's just something to consider. I consider it a principle of truth that most of these indigenous cultures had some form or another of this understanding. And that's what I'm trying to bring to this astrological weather outlook when we talk about these things. It's a way of seeing the world where you understand that inner psyche, so you can kind of take that deeper perspective. Eckhart Tolle called it, I think it was the seat of the soul or something, but you are more an observation of how you're observing and participating in the world. And that allows you some space between, so that you can, that you're not really blended with things, and that gives us some perspective so that we can um, maybe choose a little bit more how to act. And I think so. So let's explain a little more about this full moon. So here's our full moon. The moon here in Cancer, or the sun here in Cancer, the moon in Capricorn. I think this is a calling for us to see in our lives where we have become beholden to inner states of authority that may come from an early imprint within our childhood, or conditioning that's happened throughout our lives. And some of the other transits that are going on right now, I think, are contributing to this and kind of repeat the same message over. We have Mars that has joined Uranus and Sedna, squaring the nodes here. And I think that is calling for a presence and a state of mind as in how we act in the world, and the stories that we tell ourselves, and the frame or the mindset that we see the world through. And when you think about the nodal axis, you've got the nodes are at the critical degree of 0 degrees, and they're going to be moving because they move backwards. They go from 30 downwards. So this is it. We're finishing the transit of the nodes from Pisces and Virgo. And from the Virgo side, the way that we take action in the world in a distorted way can sometimes feel like we need to overwork or be perfect to, to find our value. And I think that what it's calling for, because it's the south node in Virgo, it's calling for us to let go of some of these patterns, these ways of really focusing in on the details and trying to be perfect and judging ourselves. The moon in Capricorn, if we're not measuring up to these inner voices that we may have taken on from early childhood, or even experiences from our culture, from our family, and from other friend groups and things like that. But also, that can create like this inner committee that can be very judgmental and even silent within our minds and our psyches. I think it's not always, that you hear that critical voice. A lot of us do, but when you're deciding to do something, there's that silent judgment that can happen that can prevent us from doing something that may otherwise be something that is perfectly normal. When we think about the natural law of things, it's not always the same as the judgments of our culture or our families, or things like that. So I feel like the calling, we may get flashes of insight into how this has gone on, and understandings about the narrative and how we've been taking action in the world that has been colored by these conditioned ways of thinking, these ways of being, a way of seeing the world. Gemini is like that lens, or that projector lens, that our light shines through out into the world, and the world shines back towards us. And the way that we see that, as we turn that knob and focus it, as our understanding changes, that can change the way that we act in the world drastically. And so with Uranus there, right now, Mars is culminating into Uranus, and as it passes through the exact square, I think that we're going to be letting go of some of these ways. The full moon is going to highlight or illuminate. The full moon illuminates and reflects. And what's it reflecting? It's reflecting this Cancer sun here. And I think it's no mistake that you've got Mercury is going to be going retrograde at the same time, and Jupiter is finishing its transit of Cancer and moving into Leo. And like, this is beautiful energy. It's often, I think it's going to be highlighting ways where we haven't felt safe to act in our unique individual ways of expression. And with Venus in Leo here, I think that's a calling for us to find a way to relate to these parts of ourselves from that heartfelt space, and not take things so seriously. Find a little bit of joy and some play involved when you find a part of yourself that's maybe self-critical, and it's preventing you, oh, I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that. Then it's something, when we see that, instead of saying, I need to get rid of that, we can understand how that part of us has learned to protect us. those protection parts actually come up from, earlier childhood events, things where we weren't able to emotionally process and understand this. But the human psyche is actually such a beautiful instrument. It brings it forward into consciousness when we have that capability to understand. And then we can change that south node in Virgo to a place where we take that discernment and sort out what is the different. We can differentiate the difference, the Virgo, the difference between the voices that we've taken on, these internal authorities that have maybe prevented us from being able to act from a more heartfelt space. With Jupiter going into Leo, I think that's going to really just make this so big where we can't not see it. It's beautiful timing. And then it's going to enact this Barbolt's basket, these outer planets at 4 degrees. You've got Pluto at 4, Neptune at 4, Uranus will be at 4 degrees, and Jupiter will join and activate that at 4 degrees, which will come off with this opposition. And then you've got all of these sextiles and then two trines back and forth. It's a fantastic thing. That is for another video. This is going to happen in the middle of July, and we'll talk more about this as it comes up. But Jupiter finishing this transit through Cancer, I think, is really expanding some of the conditioned beliefs that we had that maybe came from an early imprint from childhood, that they're silent. They're these silent voices that don't come forward until we have the ability, until they feel the safety involved in our inner world to be seen and be heard. And once we can do that, I think it's fascinating. It's going to depend on how we relate to that so that we can bring them into the fold rather than try to get rid of them or feel shame. Because this full moon is, we're also going to illuminate places where we feel this shame. And that south node in Virgo, once again, is for us to just differentiate and sort the wood from the chaff, and, do the work of carrying this. Oftentimes with Virgo, we can feel like we have to work to find worth, to have that worth reflected back to us from external sources. But we can change that. It's just an ever slightly change or a turning of the situation so that we can see it from a different place and maybe understand that knowing how to do something and being able to accomplish something, while is a great thing, and we can find some pride in our accomplishment, it's not really where the worth comes from. The worth is inherent. It comes from within before any of that takes place. But it doesn't hurt, right? I mean, you don't have to like stop being anything to be able to find pride in yourself. And so I think oftentimes these conditioned ways of thinking, the Capricorn conditioned ways that we've seen it, the Virgo self-critical voices, and these early imprints of how we've seen things, that Cancer stuff has really been getting hit. And with Mercury going retrograde here now, he's going to journey into the underworld, and he's going to bring messages back and bring these places where we may not feel safe to consciousness. And that allows us to take action on it in a way where we can dissolve. And now I want to talk about that north node, because that's the resolution to some of these squares here. It's the last node that came into contact. It's the one to the left of where we're at in the chart. And so Mars taking action in Gemini, we can learn, be curious, and find that. Curiosity is the opposite of shame, right? If we're curious and we're turning inward and we've got those shining eyes of curiosity, like a child looking in to see really what's there, to try and understand through a compassionate way of seeing things, that and trust that this was actually for the better. These patterns and the ways that we've learned to protect ourselves, although unconscious, and sometimes getting ourselves in trouble because we can become blended with these parts and act in ways that later we regret because it's not getting us what we want, is learning to trust that that's the path, because having those direct experiences is how we change our understanding. We can't really change that understanding unless we have the actual direct experience. I laugh a lot. I used to joke around and say, you know, I had to learn why not. I spent a lot of time learning why not in my life, but those are the most hard fought lessons, the ones that are so valid and so poignant that, yeah, it comes from something that you could say, well, man, I probably wouldn't do that again. But that lesson is, that's the stuff that never leaves. You know that one from the inside out. And so I think that the way that south node, let's talk a little bit about how that south node could act distorted. We could dissociate. We could choose not to act. We could find, we could keep thinking about ways that we can do it, and focus that curiosity into thinking and constantly trying to figure out and perfect it and make it something so that it never actually happens and we never actually take action in the world. I mean, it's like me making these videos. I'm not perfect at it. I've got a lot of ums and ahs. My voice stumbles. I don't quite get it right. Oftentimes, when I turn off the camera and post it and walk away and I'm thinking about it, I think, oh, I should have said something about this. It's the way I've seen it. I understand it. But when the camera's on and you're thinking about it, you're there's a part of me that's going, I got to do this. I'm panicked. I got to do it. So look, I'm learning live on camera with you guys. So, um, but to learn to dissolve those voices, that's that Pisces part of it. The voices of authority that aren't ours. Like we learned this from somebody else. Some of the guilt and the shame that we use to judge ourselves and compare ourselves to other people is not natural. When you change the natural law, uh, oftentimes, and if we repress that and repress ourselves because it's a cultural thing or it's a family thing or it's some internal judgment that we're not allowing ourselves to just be free and flow, that can build up rage. Jeffrey Wolf Green talked a lot about this, and especially for those of us that learned from early families, early childhood, that anger wasn't acceptable. You were supposed to repress that anger, and it's not healthy, right? Because that repressed angry part will go in the corner and will build a volcano, and we all know what volcanoes do. They erupt. And so having the emotion, the anger, is not a bad thing. In fact, with Gemini and Uranus and Mars conjunct Uranus, we may see some flashes of anger that have been repressed, that have been, hidden underneath. And the key here is that presence. And it's allowing that anger to be felt. But it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to smash furniture and, punch somebody in the nose or whatever. And so it's oftentimes once that anger flows and it can resolve, right? Because emotions have a start and an end. It's like this arc of development. Everything moves in cycles. It's everywhere. That's why we know it's a natural law, right? So as you express the anger, oftentimes we see the feelings underneath it, the emotions underneath it that were repressed from before, because natural law repressed creates the rage. And so once we express that and allow it to flow, we can see that sadness and that hurt or the pain underneath it, the fear. Those are all Mars words and Aries words. And so the resolution here is to harness that curiosity in a way that we can expand it, our consciousness, our presence enough to hold space for both sides of this nodal axis, to be able to discern what guilt, what shame, what fears, what not good enough, what needing to work to earn our worth, needing to perform to earn our worth, needing to control things and needing to have certainty in the way things are before we can let go so that we can hold both sides. And then that surrender and that trust on the other side, because if we can see both of these things, if we can let go of some of the judgment, some of that shame and guilt, maybe we've earned, but a lot of it is just learned stuff that we hold against ourselves. And like I said, this inner committee of inner voices that aren't really ours. They're our angry father or our angry mother or an angry teacher that we had in school or an angry pastor if we go to church, or you know some community value that you hear other people judging everybody else, and there's a part of you inside, that silent part, that's like, wow, I don't want to be the one that gets judged that way, so I'm not going to do that. And you filter yourself. You stop yourself. You don't take action, or you take a different action. And I think this is the Gemini part of this too, because Gemini can be a dualistic thing. You may not be acting in the way that your desires really are playing out within you. And so, how can we take action on our desires? Because taking action on our desires is acting out the unconscious desires of our soul. We're getting like pretty deep into this, but I think it's fascinating that Chiron went into Taurus lately, just recently. And I wish that I'd said more. This is what I was talking about. Is oftentimes you learn by doing. And when I walked away, we were getting ready to come on this vacation. I didn't take enough time, I thought, to really express what was coming through for that. Chiron has rings like Saturn. uh, Chariklo is Chiron's wife, and she has rings as well. And that's why they're the healers. And I think that the other thing about Chiron is he was a centaur. He was half horse with the body and the head of a human and a man. And so there's a lot of instinctual, natural understanding with Chiron. And when it's distorted, it can really be that painful part that we hold against our heart, that we judge ourselves for. But when we can harness that and really feel it, and I think that the fascinating part about it being in Taurus is that we're going to have that somatic experience to understand when we're not embodying our consciousness, when we're not actually there. And so when that fear takes over, our consciousness shrinks down because fear is a smaller state of being. But when that open heart opens up, the field, the energetic field opens up. And I think that this tactile way of feeling it and actually sensing what's going on for us is really going to come to light with Chiron and Taurus. Those wounds, those places where we just feel not worthy and our self-worth and value takes that hit, and where we can actually feel like we have to work to earn our self-worth. We have to perform in the world. I mean, this is such a patriarchal thing. I mean, I hate to use the word, but it's one of those things that I think is embedded in our culture. And that can create these voices in our head that can maybe even be silent and under the radar that we don't actually hear, but is preventing us from a natural expression, these instinctual expressions, this Aries. And we've got a sextile between Neptune and Mars right now, and I think that's here to help assist us through this. It's another repeated theme of dissolving these identities that we've taken on that don't actually match with our actual desires. And I think that's a lot about what this Neptune Saturn new phase is all about, is dissolving these places that these illusions or these meanings that we've placed on who we are in the world and not allowing this instinctual expression. I mean, Aries wants to just express this and blast it out. This is who I am. And so I think that the we've we've expressed a lot of this. Some of the stuff that's coming up, we've got Saturn is at the degree that it's going to station and turn retrograde. It's going to go back to 7 degrees in Aries. That's going to be some more uh, reworking and these cycles. They come and they do a loop. They don't just come straight across and go straight back and then go straight ahead again. They loop around and see things from a different perspective. But we know that Saturn doesn't stop and move in a different direction. Mercury doesn't stop and move in a different direction. It's all from our perspective, the way that we look at it from Earth. And when they typically go retrograde is when they get away from the sun. The sun is always opposite the earth. And so when the earth is close to these planets, it retrogrades because the earth kind of comes past it and it looks like it's going backwards. When you're passing a car on the freeway, it looks like the slower cars are going backwards, but we all know they're all just moving forward, but it's that illusion. And so I think that some of the meanings that we have placed on our identity have changed. We've dissolved a lot of the structures. And I think this is going to reflect the light of and show us where there's just a little bit more work. And it's going to give us this opportunity to have that presence, to meet it, and to learn to relate to it, to have some compassion for maybe why we weren't perfect, to have some compassion for the part that wanted to be perfect or thought that he had to be perfect in order to have that self-worth and value. So I'm going to stop this share. We're going to talk more next time about this Barbel's basket. I want to dig into this and really explore it. Some of the videos might take a little longer while we're here. We're going to be here for 3 weeks and doing our thing, and it's gonna we're doing a healing journey, um, and and I want to talk a little bit about that as we go too. And I'm sorry that lighting isn't the best, and the video quality isn't what it has been or could be. I'm learning. This is new. I'm not perfect, and you know, we're talking about the astrology and doing our thing. And so I want to thank everybody for being here, and I really value your comments. And if you want a reading, I'll put a comment. I'll put a link to do that in the show notes, and also uh, the website. Hit the like and subscribe, do all the things. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. I value you guys. I really like you being here. So thank you. We'll see you next time.